Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Star Wars Abridged. Today we will be running through Chapter 13 of Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire, and where we left off in the story was Han, Luke, and Leia were all heading toward Inclon to see Lando. So let's go ahead and jump into that, but before we do, if you're new here, we're going through, like I said, Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire. You can click on the playlist that I have at the top of this video right now to start from the beginning. Go ahead, subscribe, leave a like. We'd love to have you join the journey. But without saying anything else, let's go ahead and jump into Chapter 13 and see what is next for our heroes. So, Chapter 13 puts us back into Luke Skywalker's point of view. He is still in his X-Wing flying beside the Millennium Falcon close to Lando's mining operation on Inclon. Luke tells R2 to find a way to get the comms back online since the Star Destroyer jammed them. Luke then calls out to Leia through the Force, and when he kind of gets some feelings back from her, he can sense some anger and frustration that's coming from her. He assures her that he's there with her, he's fine, she's fine, everything's going to be taken care of, and just to kind of ease her mind, and then he internally assesses the situation. So at the moment, he isn't too worried about the Star Destroyer itself. It's in direct sunlight, and as we talked about in the last chapter, Inclon's sun is so close to the planet that you have to have shield ships to be able to even fly close to it because of how hot it is. It will melt a ship's hull. So Luke isn't really worried about the Star Destroyer. He says the heat has probably put all the weapon systems offline anyway, but what he is worried about are the TIE fighters that are safely in the ship's hangar and are ready to be launched as soon as the Star Destroyer reaches Inclon's shadow. So R2 does get the comms back up, and Luke hears Han calling for him. He asks Han if Lando has any fighters, and Han says yes, but he wants to keep them close by to protect the mining operation. So the X-Wing and the Falcon are really the only method of attack our heroes have. But Luke then suddenly has an idea. He tells Han that he'll fly ahead and use the Force to confuse and slow down the TIE pilots while Han shoots them down. Han's like, this is really as good as it's going to get, pretty much our only option, so sure, let's try it. So the TIEs fly out of the Star Destroyer's hangar, and Luke and Han both see them. Han says it looks like there's only one squadron. However, Luke sees other ships coming out of the Star Destroyer's hangar, and Han says that they look like troop carriers, and that they could be trying to invade the mining operation in a ground assault. Han and Luke are both ready to engage the TIE fighters, and Luke closes his eyes, letting the Force guide his piloting as he enters the minds of the TIE pilots to throw them off course. While Luke is in this mind-warping state, he hears a voice call out to him, and he immediately thinks that it's Ben. Ben's back, I can hear him again. But it doesn't really sound like Ben. So Luke reaches out and hears the voice call back. It tells Luke that he must come to find him, and that the voice will await him. Luke asks who the voice belongs to, where it's from, where Luke is supposed to go, but the voice just says that Luke will find it. Then it disappears. It's gone. And as it fades away, Luke snaps out of this trance that he was in and calls out to Leia. He has no recollection of what just happened during the battle, and it was almost like he completely blacked out. So he's trying to come to. Leia comes over and confirms that she's there. He's asking her what's wrong, and Han comes over and he's like, "You're what's wrong." And that's when Luke kind of looks around and realizes that all the TIE fighters are gone and the Star Destroyer is retreating. So Leia says that the battle ended rather quickly and they were able to take out 2 TIE fighters before the rest retreated, and those troop carriers that were going toward Inclon and toward the mining operation also retreated. But nobody can really figure out the Empire's reasoning for being there on Inclon, or why they would want to send ground troops to the mining operation for a ground assault. They can't really figure out what the motive was. So Luke is still kind of coming to, but he looks at his monitor and realizes that he blacked out for almost 30 minutes while talking to this mystery Jedi. And basically, he's just trying to think about what just happened, assess the situation, and he ultimately just comes to the conclusion that he needs to look into this, but he needs to be very, very careful while doing so. So the point of view then switches to Captain Pelion, who is on the Chimera with Thrawn and Sabaoth. The trio watch as the Judicator, which is the name of the Star Destroyer that was attacking Inclon, jumps to hyperspace. So Pelion kind of tells Thrawn, they jumped, the mission's over, which causes Thrawn to ask Sabaoth if they completed the mission. Sabaoth says yes. So this kind of tells us that Sabaoth was doing what he did in a couple chapters ago when he controlled those two task forces from the Chimera. He was doing this here too. He was controlling a group of soldiers, not really controlling, but he was able to command them and keep them in unison while they were trying to complete a certain mission. So Sabaoth says yes, they completed their task, and we figure out what that is. He says that they were able to obtain 51 mole miners, and this greatly pleases Thrawn. So remember, a few chapters back, Thrawn said he needed 40. They got 51. And the Star Destroyer, so now we can infer that the Star Destroyer attack on Inclon and the mining operation was just a decoy so that another set of Imperial troops could go and steal the mole miners. Thrawn then questions Sabaoth a little further, asking him things like if he had any problems guiding the troops. Sabaoth doesn't really like that Thrawn is continuously questioning him, and he actually tells Thrawn that he talked to Luke Skywalker, so now we know who that voice is, if anyone had any doubts. This catches Thrawn by surprise, and Sabaoth tells him that Luke is there on Inclon. Thrawn gets kind of upset and kind of just touchy about the fact that Sabaoth didn't tell him that Luke was down there when he first found out, and Sabaoth communicated with Luke without saying anything, without first talking with Thrawn. He just did it on his own. Sabaoth tells Thrawn that he did this because he's going to deal with Luke in his own way and time, and Thrawn doesn't need to get involved at all. So Sabaoth then requests to go to Jomark, which is the planet he will wait for Luke. But Thrawn says it's too soon. They need to make sure that Luke will respond. They need to know without a doubt that Luke will respond and go to Jomark. Sabaoth comes back and he's like, he will respond. He will come. I know he will. So Thrawn and Sabaoth come to a sort of agreement that is, if Sabaoth will go with them to see that the Judicator's repairs are correctly underway, which may take several days or even a couple weeks, then they will drop him off on Jomark as soon as that is finished. So Sabaoth's fine with this, and he leaves the room, and after he's gone, Thrawn comes up with his own plan. He tells Pelion that he intends to drop Sabaoth off on Jomark, and then backtrack to a point that Luke will be traveling through when he's going to Jomark, and intercept Luke instead of letting him actually get to the planet to see Sabaoth. Thrawn says that when they do this, they will decide whether they want to capture Luke and give him to Sabaoth or just kill him, which kind of surprises Pelion a little bit. But Thrawn says that he's reconsidering his deal with Sabaoth, especially considering how dangerous Luke is. Pelion then suggests to Thrawn that, if at all possible, they need to bring Luke in alive. Pelion is afraid that if Luke is killed, Sabaoth will return to Wayland and disrupt Thrawn's work on Mount Tantus. This kind of impresses Thrawn that Pelion was able to come up with this and think that far ahead, because it's usually the other way around. Thrawn's usually the one telling Pelion, no, this needs to happen. So he agrees with Pelion that they must keep Sabaoth off Wayland until their work there is finished. Thrawn then says that they're ready to leave, but first they're going to make a detour and drop off some probes so that they can know exactly when Luke leaves Inclon. Thrawn also says that where Luke goes, the Falcon seems to follow, meaning that in no time, the Empire will have them all. So that is a wrap on chapter 13. Pretty big chapter. It seems like this book is really building right now. Each chapter seems to get more and more important than the last. But in the next video, we will be going over chapter 14. So we're almost halfway through the book. I hope you have been enjoying it so far. I hope you continue to enjoy it. In my opinion, it is a great story and a great continuation of the original trilogy. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, make sure that you are subscribed, and if you don't care, hit that like button, and I hope to see you in the next video. As always, may the Force be with you.